What's going on, everybody? Anthony Cervino here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel with my top 5 way too early breakout quarterbacks for 2025. We're going to start with Drake Maye. And Drake Maye last season, he played through a lot of adversity, some injuries, bad offense, bad team overall, but he still had 3 out of his 13 appearances, ending the week as a quarterback 1. Things are going to be different for Drake Maye. Out goes Gerard Mayo. In comes Mike Vrabel. More stability. Also, in comes the controversial, but with a winning past Josh McDaniels to lead the offense. And while away from football for the year, Josh McDaniels, per reports, he's changing his philosophies. He has studied and he's tinkering with mobile quarterbacks and space and movement plays and motions. This is going to be a new look Josh McDaniels offense that is going to be catered to the skill set of Drake Maye. Now, we also know the Patriots, they have some stability at running back, but a lot of question marks at wide receiver. Guys like Jalen Polk, Pop Douglas, KJ Osborne, Javon Baker, Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte. They have a bunch of dudes on this roster, some of which might not be there next season. The Patriots also have a lot of cap space. They have a high draft pick. It would not shock me one bit if they brought in a high-profile pass catcher into this offense to pair him with their young future franchise quarterback in Drake Maye. Drake Maye's ADP is it's gonna be cheap, but he could potentially be a big-time breakout player because we know in the past Josh McDaniels can get his quarterbacks and his offenses going. We also know that with Drake Maye's skill set, he can run the football a little bit. Very solid, 421 rushing yards, 9th amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. 2 rushing touchdowns, and we also know he has a big arm and he can get it done. He just needs some playmakers to help him out. Next up, we're going to go to Bryce Young, and I think Bryce Young could be one of the biggest breakout quarterbacks for 2025. We know the history of Bryce Young. It was not good his rookie year, and it did not look good at all in the start of year 2. In fact, he was benched for Andy Dalton, and that might have been the best thing for Bryce Young because coming out of the benching, Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers looked like a different football team. Dave Canales, we know he can work wonders a little bit with quarterbacks, and I think he's starting to rub off on Bryce Young. 4 of 14 games coming as a quarterback 1. That is 28.6%. We know those games did not come early. They came down the stretch. So once he started getting going, it was hard to slow him down. Remember, he lit up Tampa Bay. No, the secondary wasn't good. He got to Arizona. He got to the Falcons in week 18. This was a team with a decent defense at times, playing for their postseason lives. And Bryce Young lit them up for a season best 36.4 fantasy points, finishing as the overall quarterback 1 on the week. In fact, he finished as a top 2 quarterbacks in 2 out of the last 3 games of the season. And in those 3 games, we know Chuba Hubbard started breaking down. Chuba Hubbard didn't even play in week 18. And Bryce Young got it done on his own. In fact, when it comes to rushing touchdowns, he began to flash. Since week 13 down the stretch, he rushed for 5 total touchdowns, including 4 in his last 4 games. Cleaned up the mistakes. He only threw 3 total interceptions in his last 5 games. We know he was a turnover machine to the first year and a half of his career. And this is another quarterback, folks. Not a lot of great pass catchers to help him out. Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen, who's still in the league, David Moore, a journeyman. Give me a break. Even their outstanding young tight end, Jatavian Sanders, missed the end of the year with an injury. Bryce Young really put this team on his back, and they fought hard, and they scored the football. And this is another team high draft pick. They have some money to spend. They can go out and get Bryce Young, a high-quality pass catcher, and really help him out. And big things could happen for Bryce Young, who many, including myself, wrote him out of the league after he was benched with Andy Dalton. Absolutely love Bryce Young entering 2025. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon so you can be notified anytime we go live to answer your questions or drop videos just like this. If you have any questions at all, best ball, dynasty, trade, lineups in the season, ask them in the comment section below. We will get to you as soon as we can. Next up, Michael Penix Jr. Many were really down on the Falcons for the Penix pick, and I did not agree with the philosophy, but I did not hate the pick. They were thinking long-term, and it did not come back to bite them, and you know what? It actually worked out because Kirk Cousins did not look right, and Michael Penix, albeit a small sample size, he looks the part. In fact, Michael Penix in Week 18 against the Panthers, we just talked about this game, in a shootout with Carolina. Again, it was an easy defense, but he popped for 26 fantasy points, 8.2 yards per attempt, 2 throwing touchdowns, 312 passing yards. He looked pretty good. Now, last 3 games of the year, when we first saw him, he threw an interception in each game, but he improved in each game as well as he got some experience. And this is a player, contrary to the first 2 quarterbacks we talked about, he is absolutely loaded when it comes to help in the skill positions. Very underrated, number 1, offensive line. Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in the NFL, arguably top 3 or better. Tyler Algier, fine number 2, in between the tackles grinder. Drake London, Darnell Mooney. Kyle Pitts, say what you will, he's still a quality pass catcher. And it would not shock me if the Falcons went out and got Michael Penix another receiver. Ray-Ray McCloud, I get it. We like him. He's not it. They also have Rondale Moore, who missed the season. Maybe he does something. But again, it's a throwing league. Falcons defense is a question mark. I can see them going out and getting another pass catcher, which bodes well for the fantasy outlook of Michael Penix. Talk about a player we can get really cheap who could potentially pop as a quarterback 1. Next up, my guy, Trevor Lawrence, folks. And I get it. Trevor Lawrence had a couple of nice years, right? In the league for 2 of which, 2022, 2023, finishes as a quarterback 12 and 13 in points per game. And then the wheels come off last year. Injuries, played in 12 games or played in 10 games. Erratic with the football. A lot of mistakes. The offense was not good. The Doug Peterson project, get out of town. Press Taylor, the OC, get out of town. But for once in a long time, Jacksonville did something really good. And what did they do? They brought in Liam Cohen, who I believe, next to Ben Johnson, is the best offensive coordinator available to be a head coach. And Jacksonville scooped him up. They did not let Tampa Bay retain him as their OC. And I absolutely love this because this Jacksonville Jaguars team, they're full of talent. We know Lawrence can play, former number 1 overall pick. Some deemed him as a generational talent. I'm not ready to throw that out the window yet. A couple of nice backs in ETN and the emerging Bigsby. How about the receivers? Speaking of emergence, Brian Thomas Jr. could be one of the best young receivers in the NFL. And he did that with erratic quarterback play, including catching passes from Mac Jones down the stretch. Gabe Davis, Parker Washington, Christian Kirk. They have a lot of dudes. Evan Ingram. The weapons are there. I would like to see them get some offensive line help to protect Mr. Trevor Lawrence, and maybe they do that in the NFL draft. But with Liam Cohen in town, we know if Liam Cohen can flip the switch on Lawrence and the rest of this offense. We know what the capability is last year with Baker Mayfield in the Cohen offense in Tampa. 58.8% of Baker's games over 20 fantasy points, 13 games as a QB1, that's 76.5%, and 6 games over 300 yards throwing the football. You're telling me Trevor Lawrence can't replicate that? And if that happens, we are looking at a locked and loaded top 10 quarterback in fantasy football. I am giving it one more chance on Trevor Lawrence. Finally, last one we're going to talk about, Caleb Williams. This is another player, former number 1 overall pick, all the hype in the world, but fell short. But I'm not out on Caleb Williams because, similar to Jacksonville, the Bears did something right when it comes to the offensive side of the football, and they went and got the aforementioned Ben Johnson, the number 1 offensive head coaching candidate out there. And we know, well, Ben Johnson had a lot of weapons in Detroit to make his offenses that prolific. But guess what? He has a lot of weapons to work with now in Chicago. I don't know if they're going to keep Keenan Allen. I don't think they need to. They can go out and get a number 3 receiver, but they have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze under contract. Odunze entering year 2. Cole Kmet under contract. They got the pass catchers. They got the quarterback in Caleb Williams. He has the mobility. He has the arm. He can do it all. They need a running back upgrade, but I don't know if that affects Caleb Williams. But I like what they are building in Chicago. And I'm ready to buy back in on Caleb Williams, who was erratic at times. But in the second half, we did see Caleb Williams start to put it together. Had a couple of nice games, right? Minnesota lights them up. Detroit lights them up in weeks 12 and 13, respectively. They lights up Detroit. I get the defense was not good down the stretch, but he still lit them up again in week 16. I think there is clearly untapped potential here with Caleb Williams. And I think if Ben Johnson can get it done with Jared Goff, and we know what he did with Jared Goff in his tenure, but notably last year, 8 games as a QB1, 5 games over 300 yards passing, 41.2% of his games over 20 fantasy points, and he did that on a running offense. Ben Johnson, he could turn the switch on for the Bears and Caleb Williams could emerge as the biggest breakout quarterback of 2025.